Live from the Hollywood Improv, it's the Nighttime Show. I'm Mike Black, the voice of the Nighttime Show. With us, as always, our head writer, Matt Walker. Today, our very special guest for the holidays, star of Bad Candy, Waxwork, and the Gremlins series, Zach Galligan. And now, your host, you can feed him after midnight if you can find the room, Steven Kramer Glickman.
Well done, Mike Black. Zach Galligan, sir. This is a true honor and a true pleasure, sir.
Thank you very much. It's nice to be here.
We were literally all talking before you popped on about just how so many, like, we all watched Gremlins in the theater. I saw it in '84 when I was 5 years old in the theater, and absolutely was completely terrified by the woman flying out the window. I thought that was it scared the shit out of me.
I remember it was one of the first PG-13 movies, and I remember wondering if I was going to be able to get in because I was only 9. And it was like a whole thing where it was like, oh, can I see this movie? Am I going to get to go in or not? And then they are like, yeah, we don't care.
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you there because your memory is a little off.
Okay.
It is the movie that created the PG-13 rating.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really?
Yes. Cool. What happened was, well, actually, it takes partial credit. It takes a 50% credit. Basically, what happened is you had 2 Spielberg movies in this summer of 1984. Mm-hmm. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, with the ripping the heart out of the beating heart out of the doom. And then you had Gremlins the next week or 2 weeks later with the gremlin in the microwave scene.
Yes.
Yeah. And between those 2 films, you had mothers calling up the MPAA and screaming, going, "This is outrageous!" And they were just absolutely freaking out. And so Jack Valenti, who was at the time the head of the Motion Picture Association of America, really was inundated by all of this negative feedback and really felt like they had to do something and take some kind of action. And so they created the PG-13 rating, and I believe the first PG-13 movie actually was Red Dawn.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So there's some fun Gremlins.
Yes, they made a new rating for it, which is cool.
That's really great. Are you based here in Los Angeles, or where are you at?
I live about 40 miles outside of Atlanta, Georgia, in the middle of nowhere, Georgia, and it's fabulous.
Wow. Wow. Really? When did you move out there?
I moved. Well, first of all, I'm a native New Yorker, so I was actually born and raised in Manhattan from the time of my birth until I was about 24 years old when I moved out to Los Angeles.
All right, give us streets. Give us street corners. Where were you at?
I was born on 84th and Riverside Drive, and then I moved around the corner for the majority of it on 86th Street between West End and Riverside.
Oh, yeah. I lived on, what's it called? The 85th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam for many, many years.
That was during the 70s when I grew up. That was kind of a dangerous block, so I would avoid it.
I'm a dangerous man, so that probably makes sense. Not really. That must have been a cool place to grow up.
Well, it certainly was educational and informative. I mean, I would say by the time I was 10 or 12, I could pretty much pick out every single sketchy individual that I ran into. And so you're kind of, I guess you could say your stranger danger meter was really highly evolved because I grew up in Manhattan during the 70s. And if you want to see what anyone who's listening wants to see what the 70s is like in Manhattan, just watch Taxi Driver because it captures it perfectly. And it really, when you hear De Niro say the city's like an open sewer, I hope some rain one day will come and just wash everything away. That's pretty much how it was. And when I started being an actor in the spring of 1981, I'm going to hit my 40th anniversary of being an actor on this awesome. March, which is hard to believe.
Congratulations. But, that's awesome.
Thank you. And, I would go to a lot of auditions on 42nd Street. And so it was what they called the 40 Deuce back then. And it was literally between 7th and 8th Avenue and 42nd Street. It was grindhouse cinemas, porno theaters, and drug dealers and prostitutes. And so you would walk down the street and it was legit dangerous.
Yeah.
You know? And so like I would be like going over my lines. People would be coming up to me going, "Yo, man, blow smoke. You want smoke? You want smoke? Blow, blow." And I'd be like, "What the heck is going on here?" Meanwhile, I'm like, I stop and I look and I'm like, you know, playing in the theater above me is like, you know, Dawn of the Dead and Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
You know, like there are total grindhouse movies and Bruce Lee Fists of Fury on a triple feature for $1.50. So yeah, that's what I grew up in, the crazy late 70s or early 80s of Manhattan, and it was not to be trifled with.
Mm-hmm. Just going off your casting type, knowing that pimps and hookers were like, maybe this guy. That is so bizarre to me that anyone looked at you and was like, "This is the guy for us." Just pitch to him, you know.
I guess, you know, I always, even though I wasn't really particularly innocent, because like I said, I was kind of had developed some street smarts.
Yeah.
I had a very innocent look about me. I had a very kind of open, you know, face, kind of a
Yeah.
baby face. And if you saw, like, I actually just had an amazing thing happen to me yesterday with my very, very first IMDb credit, which I know you guys actually would like to quiz people about.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually, here's the thing. It's not on IMDb. It's so obscure that it's not even listed on IMDb, even though it has two pretty well-known actors in it, Dixie Carter and William Russ, William Rusty Russ.
Wow. What?
And it's a half-hour educational special that I did for an up-and-coming HBO competitor called Showtime. Uh-huh. And they were trying to do sort of competition for ABC after-school specials.
Yeah.
So I did this thing called Someone's in the Kitchen with Jamie, and it was about the virtues of home economics class. And Dixie Carter plays the lead kid, Jamie's mom, who's played by a guy named Don Kerr, who's a Broadway actor. And I'll play Jamie's best friend, Eddie, who thinks that home ec is for sissies. And are you ready for this? I swear to God, I'm not making this up. I hadn't seen it in 39 years, and someone sent me a link because it got uploaded onto YouTube yesterday.
Oh my
God. That's amazing.
I just watched it for the first time since I shot it when I was 17. I was in 11th grade and I shot it.
What was that like, watching that?
That's so strange. That's amazing.
What was going through your head when you saw that again?
I told my friend afterwards, she was like, "How do you feel?" And I was like, "I feel unusual." It just was very, very strange. First of all, I was maybe 135 pounds. I'm so thin. Uh-huh. It's ridiculous. And I have 1981, like an attempt at a Jim Morrison hairstyle that goes dangerously wrong. And it basically, I have like a gym fro. I have just a huge, puffy, poofy hairstyle. It's like a hair helmet. It's gigantic.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's so great.
It's just amazing. And I have a much smaller version of that in Gremlins. This one is like double the size. It's like Kirk Cameron cubed.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
That sounds awesome.
Kirk Cameron cubed is that should be the title of this episode. Kirk Cameron cubed.
Everyone is racing to YouTube right now to see this. That's fantastic.
So how did you get into acting to wind up being cast in that role in the first place?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about being an actor is that obviously you always, and having a little bit of success, is that people come up to you all the time and they say, I really want to get into it. How do I get into acting? How do I break into it? I mean, I've probably heard that question literally 1,000 times. And really the key thing for me, and the reason why I broke through, was because I was in a major city that had, an acting industry. Yeah. So if you're not in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Austin, Atlanta, if you're not in a big city like that, your odds of making it are very, very slim unless you have connections.
Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is, what happened to me was I essentially got discovered. I was going to a very kind of, jacket and tie, all boys school, 77th and Broadway, called Collegiate. Among my fellow classmates, although all of them were jocks at the time, none of them acted at all. But among my classmates were David Duchovny and Jason Begay and Billy Worth. And so we had all of these kind of
amazing
up and coming actors, and they were all, none of them were in school plays. I was the only one, and I did every school play. I was Pippin in Pippin. I was Jesus in Godspell. I was I'm trying to think of what else I did. There's Danny Zuko in Grease. The big three, the 70s big three of plays that you would
right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I was doing sports. I was doing soccer and basketball and baseball, and I quit all of that in 11th grade and decided I was going to focus on doing plays, specifically musicals, because I was one of the few kids that I couldn't really sing great, but I could carry a tune and not be flat. And get it? Not B flat. Unintentional joke there. And so I would do these musicals, and unbeknownst to me, casting directors would come around, and they were looking for sort of, preppy upper middle class kids to play the children of actors in movies. So casting directors would literally come and scout our plays. So the very first audition I ever had, this casting director named Shirley Rich was casting a movie that eventually got made with George C. Scott and Timothy Hutton called Taps.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
wow.
Of course.
It was a military academy movie. And I went up for the role of North in the summer of 1980. And I got a call back. And when I got a call back, I'd actually 2 weeks earlier, I'd auditioned in Manhattan. And at that point, when I got the call back, I was actually a pot washer at a summer camp up in Woodstock, New York.
Oh, my God.
Man.
So I had to get on a bus. I had to ask for time off and get on a bus and go into the city for the day from Woodstock to it was actually Kingston, New York. Sorry, don't want to slight people from Kingston who listen to the
Right.
And I went in and read for the director, Harold Becker, who was a great director who directed The Onion Field with James Woods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is John Savage, which is a fabulous late 70s movie. And so I went in there and I read for the part of actually, you know what? I'm wrong. It wasn't the part of North. I had a line. I had a line there. I still remember it 40 years later, where I had to look at one of the military academy students and go, "What's the matter, North? Guts gone south?" I really at 16, I really liked the way that I did the kind of differentiated between the North and the South thing for the joke.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I didn't get the part. I did pretty well. And I think
After
I got
that
another
reading, you didn't get the part?
Oh, my God.
I got beaten out by this up-and-coming, unknown young guy named Sean Penn.
Oh, God. Damn you. Damn it, Penn.
Son of a bitch.
And of course, Tom Cruise was in that movie, too. And as we talk about my story, he'll come up again and again repeatedly, because he and I auditioned against each other a lot in New York in the early days, specifically for Risky Business.
Wow.
So that movie gets made without you, but
did I answer the question?
So that movie gets made without you, but that sort of broke you into where people knew who you were, and then you were able to get more auditions after that.
Well, after that, casting directors talk to each other. So Shirley Rich talked to another casting director who really, and this woman is really a New York legend. Her name is Juliet Taylor. And she cast all of Woody Allen's movies and The Great Gatsby and Kramer versus Kramer and just about every great 70s, 80s movie that you could think of.
Oh, my God.
And she came in and saw me do a sketch in a comedy thing. I did at the time, I was really into British humor, even though I was 15 years old. And I was doing something, a sketch from a show called Beyond the Fringe, which was a big 60s British comedy thing with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. And so I was doing a Peter Cook sketch about a lecherous priest. And I guess she saw it. She thought I was good. She asked my drama teacher for an introduction. So I can still close my eyes and see her walking up to me in the lunchroom of collegiate. And she sat there and said, "Do you want to try out for this movie?" And I said, "Sure." So the movie actually was called No Small Affair. And I tried out for it and didn't get it again. But she took a Polaroid of me and she put it on a piece of cardboard that you would like put on the back of like shirts that came from the cleaners.
Sure.
And she put all of my stats on it and stuff like that. And then the movie went on and got made. Are you ready for this? With Matthew Broderick, who was unknown at the time, and Sally Field.
Oh my God.
And wait for this. And the director, Martin Ritt, 3 weeks into the production, had a heart attack. So the movie got shut down and the property got stopped. And they made it 4 years later with Demi Moore and John Cryer.
Wow. Oh my God.
It's just
so.
It's what's so fascinating about you, is that like you're just curving around corners of these massive, massive films where like you could have ended up in this one, you could have ended up in that one, and watching these roles end up going to these other young guys who some of them blew up or had big successes or this or that, and then you end up in this film that is a perfect. Yeah, Gremlins, I believe, is a perfect film because you have Joe Dante, who's a fucking genius. You have Chris Columbus, who's one of the most incredible writers in the world. You have Spielberg. You've all these amazing people, and then it's you. You're the main guy, and this is a movie I have gone to see in the theater with Mike Black here, twice in the last few years. Before COVID, they would show it at different theaters. I think we went and saw it in the Cinerama Dome and at the ArcLight,
Chinese also,
and we saw it at the Chinese in the giant theater at the Chinese. It was like it's all these other films, Taps and this and that. It's like these are great films, but people aren't going to see them. That's not they're not being rescreened 50 20 30 years later. Like I've bad at time, but
50 years later.
Yes. Yeah, I know, but you know what I'm saying. It's an amazing thing. Hey, real quick before we continue the show, I want to talk about a third-generation, family-run business that I am very proud to be working with. Sennheiser is the top tier microphone company in the world, and we are so lucky that we are now recording our show using Sennheiser microphones and their headphones. It's awesome.
We're talking into Sennheiser MD42 microphones and using Sennheiser HD25 headphones, and these sound amazing.
I mean, listen to Mike Black's voice.
Listen to the rich and sumptuous soundscape that comes out of my voice.
Oh.
Every time I speak into a Sennheiser.
Absolutely. Go check out their microphones and their sound equipment over at Sennheiser.com. All right, let's get back to the show. How did you end up, getting cast in that? How did this process happen?
How did I end up getting cast in Gremlins?
Yeah.
There is a casting director in New York. Her name is Susan Arnold, and I had just done a movie that never got an official release, which is very strange considering the people involved. It was an MGM movie called Nothing Lasts Forever. And it was produced by Lorne Michaels, Saturday Night Live, and directed by Tom Schiller, who did these black and white films for early SNL called Schiller's Reel. And it had Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Imogene Coca, Mort Saul, Sam Jaffe, Lauren Palm from Futurama, like all these incredible actors.
Wow.
And obviously, and it was supposed to have John Belushi too, but he died almost exactly a month before shooting in 1982. So I was, as Leah Thompson would say on her podcast, or on her podcast she did with you, I was the hot guy at the time. So when you're the hot guy at the time, you'll get seen for anything. Like even if you're completely wrong for it, they'll be like, "Let's bring him in. He's hot," you know. Yeah. So they Susan Arnold was like. That week was a crazy week for me because I was going up for The Hotel New Hampshire, which was a movie with Jodie Foster and Nastasia Kinski that was super hot at the time, and also going up for something else. I can't remember. And I mean, you're talking 37 years ago.
Yeah.
And Gremlins. So Susan Arnold called me in, and we were not allowed to see any of the script except for the audition scene, which was the scene where I asked the Phoebe Cates character out on a date.
Right.
Which is totally nothing like the rest of the movie at all, which is funny.
Right.
Yeah.
It was absolutely, in fact, when I first got it, I thought maybe it wasn't in the movie. I thought maybe it was sort of a generic scene that they gave us to hide more details of the movie. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, or it could be like, oh, this is a rom-com called Gremlins. Interesting, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was like, well, we were looking for, I thought maybe like, we're looking for a certain thing in the character, so we'll just give them a rom-com scene, and we'll see whether it's good enough for the stuff that we're hiding from everybody, because we don't want it to leak out.
Right.
And even back in the early 80s, you know, what was the thing that most people are stunned about with Gremlins is that, and I'm skipping to the end, but I'll go back to the process. When I got the part, I had to agree to do the movie without having read the script.
Wow.
I literally signed on to the movie having no idea what I was going to do. Shit. Like at all.
Now, is that because I mean, even though you were sort of like the hot guy at the time, like you hadn't really landed the big role yet, like you were always very close. Did they have that power because you hadn't landed one of those big roles yet? And they're like, we know we can make this guy do whatever we want? Or was that just sort of like, hey, that's just what they were going with for everybody? Like Phoebe Cates, she didn't know, anybody didn't know.
I would say the first one, because they certainly had the power to make me sign away every single bit of merchandising revenue that I was ever entitled to.
Oh my God.
I mean, like people always go, dude, you probably made a fortune on all that merchandise. I was like, I literally didn't make a penny. Literally,
man.
Which was kind of brutal when the merchandise came out in 1984, and by the end of the 1984 business year, it had made $1 billion in 1984.
Oh God.
Well, it at the time, you know, I was 20, not really thinking about money. I was thinking about the fact that I was on Hardy's records and with posters on girls' walls and on mugs and lunch boxes and bubblegum cards. And
did you get one of like everything that you were in? Like, do you have like a giant Gremlins collection of all your little action figures and stuff?
You know, it's really weird. People come to my house and they expect it to be some Gremlins shrine, and I literally have a framed poster of the movie, and that's it.
Wow.
Really?
I would have everything. Like, we went to Walter Koenig's house to do an interview with him. He has every Chekhov doll ever produced. That's true. Which is, and I'm like, that's exactly what I would do. I would have every single toy ever made of me. Yeah.
Well, I do have NECA. I think it's NECA put it out, which is a great toy manufacturer. Does a lot of good Gremlins stuff.
NECA. Yeah. Those guys are great.
Yeah, NECA is amazing, and they put out a Billy Peltzer figure, or as I like to call it, a Zaction figure.
Nice.
And so I got one of those, and I have I do have one of those on my desk, my little action figure of myself, because that's just too neat.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That's so great.
Getting back, do you want to get me to wrap up?
I
want to hear that happen.
Wait, I want to ask one real super nerdy question.
Get nerdy, Matt.
What accessories does your action figure come with?
It comes with it. Actually, NECA did an amazing job. I have the scratches are on my chest on my sweater. My hand has the cut with the gauze bandages around the back of my hand. And it comes with a correctly green-colored North Face backpack and a baby Gizmo.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome that it comes with Gizmo.
Mike's
awesome.
jumping on eBay right now.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta
That is
love
not
that.
untrue.
Yeah.
What?
So basically,
Yeah.
do you want me to finish the audition? or you want me
Please,
to-
please. Oh my
Yes.
God, of course.
So I came in and I read for Susan Arnold. She was like, great, can you come back and meet the director and producer? I said, sure. 2 days later, I came back, and Mike Fennell, the producer, the actual producer, Steven Spielberg was the executive producer and oversaw a ton of things having to do with the movie, including the final say for casting. So it was Steven that picked Phoebe and myself.
Wow.
And so Mike Fennell came in, and Joe was not there. And it turned out that Joe is this is some interesting Joe Dante trivia. Joe does not drive to this day, does not know how to drive a car.
Oh my
He
God.
traveled particularly well, and it was at the time, was not used to or adjusted to flying. So he was very kind of plane sick even the next day.
Yeah.
So I auditioned just for Mike. So the very first time that I met Joe was the final callback, which is what they called at the time mix and match sessions, where they pair you with different women to kind of see, determine what kind of chemistry you have with them.
Of course. Yeah.
So I went to the mix and match session, and I knew that I was going to meet Joe, and they were going to put me on video. Now, putting me on video at the time, back then, was they had you stand in front of a big white screen, and the camera was this monstrosity. It was so huge. And they taped it into this enormous VCR thing that spat out this huge VHS tape, which you then put into an American Express envelope. A Federal Express envelope, and FedEx to LA, and they watched it like a day later. It was the technology. Remember, there's no computers, there's no internet, there's nothing. Every time that we got a script, I had to go and pick up a script. It wasn't emailed to me. I had to get in cars and drive and go get it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It was decades I had to do that. So all actors did. So I get to the thing, and you have to understand, they're still not giving us anything else, so it's the same scene. So I know the lines backwards and forwards. I've already done them at 2 other auditions. So I walk in to the room. It was in Midtown. I can't remember where. It was in the 50s in Manhattan. And I walk in, and the first person that I see is Phoebe Cates. Now, I had met Phoebe before because we had both auditioned together for a Paul Mazursky movie with John Cassavetes and Jenna Rollins called Tempest, based on the Shakespeare play. Mm-hmm. And actually, you can see this movie, even though wasn't very well received. It's really quite good. Also in it is a young actress making her film debut by the name of Molly Ringwald. So just to kind of show you of everyone who was sort of bubbling up and getting hot at that point.
Yeah.
So I had read with Phoebe, and I had a massive, massive, uncontrollable crush on her. I thought she was just about the most attractive person I'd ever met in person. And everyone knew her. Yeah. Everyone knew her in Manhattan. She was going to a school called Hewitt, which was aligned with Collegiate and Dalton and Brearley and Nightingale, and all of these kind of prep schools were sort of linked as one big mass in Manhattan. And she had been on the cover of 17 magazine, which was like the absolute ultimate in the early 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so she was kind of like, in 11th grade, 12th grade circles, she was very, very well known as like the most successful kind of model girl that there was in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I walked in, and I can actually close my eyes and tell you what she was wearing. It's so vivid. Some of these memories are so burned in my brain. It's crazy.
Yeah.
She was wearing this new brand of sneakers I'd never heard of before called Reeboks, and she had sort of slightly acid washed jeans that had zippers right by where your ankles are. Mm-hmm. Like they had little small zippers.
Oh, yeah, I remember those.
Yeah.
And she had a baseball shirt on, like it was a kind of like a white one with orange sleeves, reddish orange sleeves, baseball kind of shirt. And she had almost no makeup, or if she put it on, it was imperceptible. And she had her hair back in a ponytail, and she looked fabulous.
Yeah.
And I walked in, she goes, "Hey," and I go, "Hey." First of all, I was stunned she remembered me, and then I was thrilled, and then my heart started racing about a trillion beats a minute. And she goes, "Hey, are you reading for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You want to read with me? Just to like get up to speed?" I was like, "Sure." So I kind of, scooted up next to her, and we started running the lines. We got through it once, and then we got through it about another half of the time. And Susan Arnold peeked her head out of the door, which was closed. And she just peeked it out. She saw both of us, and she went, "Zach, Phoebe, are you ready?" And we looked at each other like, whoa. We had been so busy running lines, I hadn't even signed in, because usually you come in, the first thing you do, there's a sign-in sheet, and you sit down, you take your material, and you practice, and then they call you in. And so she and I went in, and the reason why I'm telling this in such a long, detailed way is it's going to have some major relevance.
Oh, it's the best story. I'm so, you have no idea how happy I am that you're telling the story. Just Zach, we have people come on this show sometimes where you go, how did you end up getting cast in one of the greatest movies of all time? And they go, God damn it, I don't know. You just sit there going, "Oh man, come on!" Like you want the juice. You want to hear it, and this is fantastic. Please continue.
So I walk in with Phoebe. Phoebe is unbelievably smooth in terms of the way she handles, people. And I'm like a stumbling, bumbling. I'm like Inspector Clouseau, tripping over the furniture and everything like that. And so Joe Dante has this great kind of slightly squeaky voice. He's like, "So how are you guys doing? Great. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand shoulder to shoulder next to that white screen there, and we'll do the scene. And I want you guys just to sort of mimic like you're walking down the road and having a conversation. And I want it to be real nice and natural. And I don't want you to push or anything like that. Just, see if you can enjoy being with each other. Can you do that?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course." So we started the scene and we did it. And it's, the scene where she's like, she hates Christmas and she won't tell me why. And it's kind of mysterious. And I'm like, and I have the incredibly sensitive line where I go, "What are you, a Hindu or something?"
Amazing.
Probably not the best possible line nowadays, but anyway. And so we get to the end, and I always tried to do one thing in the early auditions. I still try and do it, is I always try and make one line have some kind of something special or interesting about it that I think nobody else is going to do except me. And so what I decided was that when I asked her for a date, I was going to expect her to automatically go, "Yeah, I can't. There's no way." Right. And so when she says, "Yeah, I'd love to," and I hoped that she would say it really quickly so that it would throw me off, so I could then start being disappointed and then kind of hear what she said and go, "Wait, really? Wow, that's amazing." So I did that, and I thought it went pretty well, and I was really happy with it. And, basically the scene ended, or so I thought. And so I said the last line, she and I said the last line, or whatever, whoever said the last line, and we looked at each other, kind of, we had to sort of do a profile look because we're shoulder to shoulder. And I'm waiting for Joe Dante to call cut, and he doesn't call cut. Well, for those of you non-actors listening to the podcast, if the director doesn't call cut, you could, until he calls cut, you go on for another 30 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You just keep improving, making stuff, stay in the character, stay in the scene till the director says cut.
Right.
Well, I'm an inexperienced actor. I've barely been acting 2 years. This is a high pressure situation. I have no idea what to do. Just none. I'm just left with like nothing to do. So very awkwardly, I looked at Phoebe and she's giggling, I'm giggling. And I looked over sort of off to Joe, who's standing right next to the camera. And I was just baffled at what to do. So I looked into the camera and put my head on Phoebe's shoulder and sighed and went like, isn't she dreaming? Do a funny kind of like button on the scene just to make it kind of interesting and fun. And so obviously Joe Dante saw that I didn't know what to do, so he said cut. Afterwards, and this is the whole reason I told you this long story. Afterwards, when I got the part, I'm on the set with Joe Dante, and obviously I'm an up-and-coming actor, and I want to learn not only from my failures, but from my successes. So I said to Joe, can you tell me something? What did I do in order to get this part? Because I want to repeat it and get more parts and do these positive things again.
Yeah.
And he goes, actually, he said, this is what happened. We took the tape and we sent it to Spielberg, and then we flew back the next day and we sat down to watch the tapes together. And then your and Phoebe's audition came up. And at the end, he goes, I don't know if you remember this. He goes, at the end of the tape, you put your head on Phoebe's shoulder and you sighed and you looked at the camera. And Spielberg saw that and he went, oh my God, look, he's already in love with her. I don't need to see anything else. And he got up and walked out of the room. And that's when I got the part.
Wow. Oh,
that's awesome.
God. That's amazing.
That is so fantastic.
That was so great.
And it really does read in the film, how much you like her. It really comes across very beautifully, I think,
Yeah.
It kind of holds your characters together, the through line through the whole movie,
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons why Spielberg, I think, is so good at directing kids and especially young kids and younger actors so well is that he looks for some of the dynamics that are in the script to already be there in the actors. So the actors don't really have to act as much as just sort of relax and be themselves.
Yeah.
And so that way, if the actors relax and be themselves, and he creates an atmosphere that's relaxing where the actors can have fun, then the natural dynamics between the actors, like my crush on her, comes out, and you don't need to perform it. It's just there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, a quick thing I want to talk about, Mike Black. I think this is something that we really should talk about, and it's a company that was founded in 1983 in Tokyo, Japan. Of course, I'm talking about the Zoom Corporation.
Zoom.
Now, if it wasn't for Zoom, and Matt knows this, we would not be able to do our show. They make the best audio equipment in the world. Which one are we using right now?
We're recording onto a Zoom LiveTrack L8 right now, and when we go do our live events at conventions and stuff, we often use the Zoom H6, and they're both just fantastic pieces of equipment. You plug your microphones in, you plug your headphones in, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, whether you're a classically trained pianist or a run-and-gun filmmaker or a podcaster like us.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do a ton of podcasts, and I can tell by listening when they're using a Zoom and when they're not.
Yeah,
it's the mark of excellence.
It really is. Go check out all their stuff over at zoom-na.com. That's zoom-na.com. Be professional, for God's sake. zoom-na.com. All right. Okay, let's get back to the show.
So then you get on set, you start making this movie, and there's obviously a lot of little creatures running around in the film. So how many of those are like puppets you're interacting with in person? I mean, how much of that stuff was done afterwards, just sort of like green screen stuff? Like, how did that come together?
Well, it was interesting because, again, I'm going to reference something that Leah Thompson said in your podcast, because back then they would make movies without knowing how they were going to make them.
Yeah.
They just didn't really, they were like, oh, we'll figure it out on the set. And Chris Wallace, who is the guy who designed Gizmo and all of the Gremlins for the first movie. In the second movie, Rick Baker took over because Chris Wallace had such an unbelievably anxious and horrific time on Gremlins that he almost had a nervous breakdown at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes, because what happened was he started having success accomplishing things, like, oh, wow, Disney looks good. So then people would go, hey, can he skateboard? And then Chris would be like, oh, you have to understand, too, Chris was 28 years old at the time when he was working on this movie. He was a kid, basically a kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A young man. And this is his first big thing. He's working for Spielberg. So every time someone said, hey, can you get a gremlin to breakdance? He'd be like, yeah, of course. And so it was kind of like, you have to imagine this metaphor. Imagine you have a giant stack of papers on your desk, and it takes you hours to do all of them. And the second you're done with all the work, and you go, I can finally rest. somebody comes in with a stack 3 times larger.
Yeah.
And now imagine that process happening day after day after day for 2 years without a day off.
Oh my God.
Wow.
It reminds me of
Holy crap.
we interviewed Brian Henson on the show, and he talked about like when they were making like the Muppet movie, and they had to have Kermit ride a bike, and we were like, well, how did Kermit ride a bike? And he's like, we made Kermit ride a bike. He's like, there's no effect. We just figured out how to have a puppet ride a bike, and we did it. And that sort of seems like the kind of thing they would do, where it's like, how do you make Gizmo breakdance? We just made him breakdance. I don't know.
Well, apparently the thing that pushed Chris Walas over the edge was, and most people don't know this, but when we shot the first Gremlins, we did 17 weeks of humans and puppets.
Wow.
And basically we were done. Okay. The human part was done. And what most people don't know is on the day I left, which is August 4th, 1983, that was the end of all human actors and sequences. And they shot nothing but effects shots until mid-November.
Oh my God.
So they did all of August, September, October, and half of November. And the breaking point was like in September. Joe Dante said, put up a piece of paper on the wall, and he's like, anyone who comes up with some good ideas for what Gremlins should do, some wacky stuff for what they should do, write them down. So people wrote down like 50 impossible things to do. And they like ride it like Kermit riding a bike.
Yeah.
And they picked the top 10 and told Chris to do it. This is after 2 years of working on it.
That poor man.
Basically, they just set up 10 more desks for him with 10 more stacks of paper.
Yeah.
And he had a breakdown.
Yeah.
He got on the back of a truck, and he was driving with some, puppet from one stage to another, and he fell off the truck and hurt his ankle. And even though it was kind of a minor thing, it was the straw that mentally broke his back, and he freaked out. And to this day, the dude is like in his 60s. To this day, he told me, because I saw him at the 30th anniversary reunion we had. He tells me that when people will say Gremlins to him or ask him about the Gremlins experience, he has minor PTSD.
Holy shit.
Man.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Like a Vietnam vet. He has PTSD about doing Gremlins. And he would not do Gremlins too. He refused.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that seems...
Oh, could you imagine? That movie would have destroyed him.
Yeah.
As hardcore as Gremlins was with practical effects and all that stuff. Gremlins 2, when you have like the fruit gremlin and the bat gremlin and stuff like that, that would have killed it.
Did you ever see, Zach, the Key and Peele sketch about Gremlins 2?
Let me just tell you this. Anytime there's anything about Gremlins, I get sent 90 copies.
Oh my God, of course. It's like the stupidest question ever. Yes, of course. No, of course. You know what I something that I love too? I was just looking at like the producers on the film, and it's like, oh, I knew Frank Marshall was involved. I knew that Steven Spielberg was an executive producer on it, but it blows my mind that Kathleen Kennedy was an executive producer on that movie, because it just goes to, like, now everybody knows Kathleen Kennedy's name because of the work that she's been doing with Star Wars and with Disney and with everything. But it's an amazing thing to think that she was executive producing back like that far back. Like it's mind blowing. It's so cool.
Yeah, you have to understand one thing about Kathy Kennedy is that she was married to Frank Marshall at the time. And Frank Marshall was a pretty powerful guy. And in fact, we name check him in Gremlins 2. Gremlins 1, where Corey Feldman and I are up in the attic. And he goes, oh wow, Hooded Menace #1. Where'd you get that? And I go, I'm not sure. I think Dr. Fantasies, and that's Frank Marshall's nickname, Dr. Fantasy.
Whoa, that's so cool. Yeah. Oh, okay. You got to tell us about Corey Feldman, because I'll tell you what. He is a magical being that has graced this world with his musical magic. There's a lot of magic happening with Corey Feldman.
You have to understand something about Corey. I've known Corey since the dude was 11. Okay, Gremlins was his film debut.
Yeah.
He was literally a 7th grader. Okay.
Wow.
And so I've known him for so long. And I didn't really quite fully understand him until I read his book, which has possibly the greatest title of all time, Choreography.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into detail about it. You should have him on the show. But he had some pretty terrible parents.
Yeah.
And he's very, very open about it. And he's one of these kids that sued for emancipation when he was 16 to get away from them, and he should have. But of course, he then immediately got thrown to the wolves, and at 16 really had no idea what he was doing because he was 16.
Right.
It's sort of a cautionary tale about what can happen to child stars in that, if they don't have a strong home life and a strong support system, this business will eat them up.
Yeah.
He had neither. He had no home life to speak of that was supportive in any way, and he had just a predatory group of people who were his support system.
Yeah.
So he was basically he was in big trouble. And when I saw him in 1989, and he was just a mess, I knew I didn't really feel like there was anything I could do because at that point he was 20, and when you're 20 years old, you don't really listen to anybody.
Right.
I didn't.
Yeah, when you're 20, you know everything, right? So you're not listening to anyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's true. And so I'm not a particularly religious person, but I prayed for him because I sensed that bad things were going to happen both to him and to Corey Haim, who I knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And they did, and they did. And it's just one of those things. So I have a very, very soft spot in my heart for Corey and what he's been through. And, he gets a lot, he's the author of a lot of it. So, he really puts himself out there, and he takes some huge risks.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to understand something. I was a presenter at something called the Saturn Awards, which for people listening to the podcast, if they don't know, it's like sci-fi fantasy awards.
Sure, yeah.
And I was a presenter in 1991. I gave away Best Actor and Best Actress to Best Actor to Anthony Hopkins, but he didn't show, which I was disappointed about, for Silence of the Lambs. And then I gave Linda Hamilton Best Actress for Terminator 2, and sitting in the front row were Schwarzenegger, Linda Hamilton, and her husband, James Cameron.
Wow.
So
cool.
But the thing that was so crazy about it is that Corey was the host of the Saturn Awards.
Jesus.
He hosted it, and he hosted it in full Michael Jackson regalia.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah,
God.
that was
what he
a
was doing
big
at that
thing
time,
for him
yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
And he opened the show doing Smooth Criminal. Now, all I wanted to say was, and I said it to him, I said, Corey, you do a great Michael Jackson, but we've already got a Michael Jackson. At the time, he was alive and one of the biggest people on the planet. And I was like, dude, you should be Corey. You shouldn't be Michael Jackson,
Yeah.
And he just needed a parental figure to model himself after so badly. And when Michael Jackson was really nice to him and kind to him, and according to Corey, absolutely nothing happened
Yeah.
whatsoever. He said that multiple times, and defends Michael Jackson to this day rather vehemently.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson was one of the first people that ever really was generous to him and showed him love and kindness. And so he just, the same way that people model themselves after their dad, he modeled himself after Michael Jackson, and it's just it's never changed.
Well, I mean, imagine modeling yourself after someone like Michael Jackson, and then Michael Jackson going, "Hey, you know what would really complete this outfit? My jacket from Thriller."
Yeah.
Like,
you're not going to say no to the jacket.
No, like it's like when you have that kind of encouragement from the guy, it's like everyone else can, anyone else's opinion doesn't really fucking matter because you're wearing the stuff from the guy who made it famous. You know what I mean? It's like being a knight in someone's court. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
And I'm sure, too, having someone around who didn't have ulterior motives, like, everyone, like you said, everyone was predatory that was in his support system. If you're hanging out with a billionaire, they don't really need anything from you. They're hanging out with you because they like you, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't vouch for other people, but Corey has always said nothing but amazing things about their relationship and how much fun he was and how hilarious he was and some of the good times they had. And he was, went to Neverland and everything like that. And apparently he had a ball. And
did you ever get to go to Neverland? Have you ever been to? Did you ever get to go?
I never met Michael Jackson.
Who's of everybody that you've met in your career? Who are like, let's say top 3 people that you've met that you're just like, I can't believe I'm in the same room as this person, where you get tongue tied. Has there ever been anybody? Is there anyone you get tongue tied around?
Like the way Steven is right now?
Yeah,
as he's posing that question to you.
I'm such a huge fan, Zach. I can't even get the words out.
Well, I would say top 3. Well, that's tough. Well, certainly I met Prince, and that was pretty crazy. But he had a very unmistakable aura about him. He's one of the few people where, like, he could enter the room and your back would be turned, but you'd feel like a presence. Not a murmur from the crowd. Like, it could just be you in the room with your back to him, and he'd walk in the room. And even if you didn't hear his footsteps or something, you'd feel that, like, he had a very unusual presence, like very unusual presence and an intensity. And I didn't really say much to him, but I mean, I basically said something to him. I don't even remember. It was actually at a club, the Roxbury, like the movie, The Night at the Roxbury. He had a private booth there, and I had a couple of cocktails too many back in the day, and I decided I was going to go up and say something to him about, I think it was about one of his records. And so I went up and I said something to him and stuff like that. And he was pretty standoffish, but at one point I said something, and I can't even remember what it was. And he just looked at me. Really, he tilted his head, kind of like a dog tilts their head when they're looking at something physical. He tilted his head and he looked at me, and he was just kind of like, he had this slight smile curl up on like the right side of his mouth. And then I think he just shook his head and said, no, he really didn't say much. But it was just being around him was pretty trippy. So that would be one.
He looked like the dog in his master's voice in that painting, the RCA logo one they do, where the dog's all like tilted head.
Yeah.
Wow. Really, Matt?
Reference from 1912.
Bizarre reference.
He's like, I just pull out a gramophone label.
Yes.
Matt is 86 years old, so don't worry.
Who doesn't love a nice reference to Thomas Edison's dog?
I think you have to throw Spielberg in there, because the first time that he came to the set of Gremlins, I don't really think I've ever seen anything like this. Although I wonder if Joe Dante isn't referencing it in Gremlins 2. Remember in Gremlins 2 when Daniel Clamp shows up, John Glover shows up for the first time, and like a woman looks into the camera and she goes, "He's here!" Everyone in the office freaks out. When Spielberg showed up on the set, people didn't think he was going to show, because at the time he was working on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and he was in Sri Lanka for most of the shoot and was gone. And I actually, one of the nice things was I would go to the Amblin office that was on the Warner Brothers lot, and Spielberg had a huge collection of stand-up arcade games. Remember, it's 1983, so he had Pole Position, and he had Millipede, and he had Food Fight, which was a great one. I used to finally I would go over there when Gizmo would break, and Gizmo would break all the time, and I would spend 3-4 hours in Spielberg's office, and the secretary was oblivious. I went into Spielberg's office. I sat at his desk. I put my feet up on his desk. I played with his rosebud sled. I rode the E.T. bicycle around. It was hilarious.
This may be the most '80s sentences that have happened since the '80s. When Gizmo broke, I went to Steven Spielberg's office to play the arcade games.
Ride E.T.'s bike.
And ride E.T.'s
bike. That's too good.
The first time that he and I'll tell you about when I was playing pole position and Spielberg just showed up out of nowhere and decided to challenge me to pole position.
Yes.
So the first time we were shooting something, I don't remember what it was, and I literally heard someone say this. I was like outside, I think I was sitting on the steps of my trailer. And I had my Walkman at the time, and I was really into this U2 album called War that had come out at the time. And I kept listening to Sunday Bloody Sunday and New Year's Day over and over and over again because I was 19. I liked rock and roll.
Yeah.
And so I'm on my Walkman. I'm listening to that, Synchronicity by the Police. So those are the two albums from that summer that was just everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And I see this woman. She's like making weird faces, like a surprise face. So I pull my head earphone plug out, you know what I mean, and slide it off. And all I heard was her go like this, "What? Oh my God." And I was like, "Oh my God, what?" And I'm like, and I said, "Oh my God," I said, "Oh my God, what?" Because when you're 19, you'll just butt in on anybody's conversation.
Yeah, right.
And she looks at me and she goes, "Spielberg's here." And I went, "What?" And I felt this wave of unbelievable panic. I don't know why. Unprepared, and I was guilty in kind of a Franz Kafka way of just doing everything wrong without having done anything wrong.
So
and I saw everybody start hustling. Like people just started tucking their shirts in, and it was just a level of activity. I'm not joking. It was like the king was coming. You know, you see in old movies where they're like, "Here comes the king," you know, and everybody started freaking out. And I remember I went into the after lunch. You have what are known as touch-ups, right? Because you kind of mess your makeup a little bit and your lip gloss and stuff like that. You need touch-ups to get your makeup freshened up for the shooting after lunch because of just the eating process. So I went in for touch-ups on my makeup, and I sat down, and the woman who was doing the makeup and hair, she started to put makeup on foundation back on my face, and her hands were shaking.
Oh my God.
She was so nervous that he was coming. And I was like, now that is some power right there.
Yeah.
You know, people just find out that you're coming and people are trembling.
Wow.
And people were trembling. And now the weird thing about it is, and I hope Mr. Spielberg, who's such a great guy, is listening to this,
Yes.
he was completely unaffected by it. And I don't want to say he was oblivious to it because he's a super smart guy, but I think he saw it as an irritation. He's like, I think he was kind of like, if he could have said it, he would have said, "Guys, can you just calm down? I'm not going to bite you. It's just a movie. Let's make it."
He didn't
want people to bow down to him. He wanted people to act normal and have fun and make movies and relax. Because he's actually quite a down to earth person who's like a kind of a movie geek.
Yeah.
And and a kind of a nerdy, fun loving kind of nerdy guy. I don't know what he's like now.
He was probably like to nerds what Bill Gates is now at that time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was that important and that revolutionary.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So he came over to me, and I honestly I don't remember much about it because I think I was speechless and trying not to look like an idiot. And I was nervous too, and my heart was pounding too, just because everybody else's heart was pounding, even though I hadn't done anything. And it was just that whole thing. And he was super nice, and he was just really nice. And I think I even had the guts to ask him a question like, "How was Sri Lanka?" And he was like, "Oh," and I talked to him for maybe a minute, and then he went over and he talked to Joe Dante, and then he left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that kind of broke the ice. And then maybe a week later, Gizmo broke for the 90 trillionth time. Went over to thing, and I was playing pole position, and this would be such a great shot in a movie. I'm playing pole position, and you know how like when you have the big arcade screens, there's like a kind of protective plexiglass in front of the actual screen.
Yeah.
I see his face reflected in the plexiglass screen as I'm playing.
God.
And I think to myself, that looks like fucking Steven Spielberg standing right behind me. And I like do a slow turnaround like Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver when he looks in the back seat of the sketchy passenger. I turn slowly around and I look and there he is and he's like, "Want to play?" And I'm like, "I'm going to say no."
Oh my God.
I'm just say, "Hey, Steve, fuck off," in the middle of the game.
Yeah.
So I said, "Yeah, sure." So I did. I was like, we stopped the game, put it on 2 players, and he goes, "You go first." I went first, and I was so pumped, and I'm a super competitive person. And I did this really, really great first section, and then I died on some chicane or something like that. And then it was his turn. The guy gets on pole position and starts to play. And plays, gets to my thing, dips through it. Next thing you know, he's driving through places I've never seen. He's driving through cities. And I'm looking at the score, and it's like, I have like 15,000. He has like 392,000. With it, he decimated me. And it happened. It was great.
So
That's
he's just
awesome.
good at everything. That's what we've learned.
He somehow gets the Donkey Kong kill screen.
Yeah.
It's like, how is that even in this game?
So wait a second. I'm just going to wrap this Spielberg thing up with an anecdote. It's very short, but it will cause the nerd orgasm that we've been building up to.
Oh, the best.
We've had nerd foreplay for basically about 35 minutes that we need to release.
I can't wait
The
to
movie's
hear this.
over. It's September 1983.
Mhm.
I'm back in Manhattan. It's been a month, maybe 6 weeks since we finished the movie. And I'm sitting on my couch and I'm bored. After doing Gremlins, everything seems boring.
Yeah.
Right.
Literally, it's like you go from like the greatest adrenaline rush of all time to just nothing. And then suddenly I hear, "Eh," and I go, "That's weird. That's my back door, which is the freight elevator. What the And I go and open the back door to my apartment where the freight elevator is. And there's this guy with an enormous box. And he goes, "Are you Zach Galligan?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, will you sign here, please?" And so I sign the thing and he gives me the box. And he has to bring it in on one of those kind of like, it's not a forklift, but it's like the kind of thing where you put it on the thing and you wheel it in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he wheeled it into my kitchen. And I opened the box. And inside was a card that said, "Now you don't have to come to my office to play this anymore." And it was actually not the pole position game, but the game that I played all the time, Millipede. He sent me his Millipede machine
Wow.
Oh my God.
across country.
Wow.
What an amazing gift. That is
Steven
so awesome.
Spielberg shipped me his Millipede machine. I just want every nerd listening to this to fully digest that
Mhm.
and to come when they feel like it.
Oh my God. And I'm spent.
Yes.
What happened to it? Do you still have it, or?
So here's what happened to it. You got to realize, I got it in 1983.
Of
The
course.
internet is 15 years away.
Right.
Okay? So if you play these arcade games long enough, the tube that illuminates it goes out eventually.
Of course. Sure. Yeah.
So around 1991, the tube went out. Everyone got bored playing it. Nobody thought that it had any intrinsic value or knew how to fix it or what to do with it.
Oh, no.
So we had someone come and pick it up and junk it.
Crap.
Man.
And of course, 6 years later, you had eBay, and everyone's looking around going, "What do you think we could have gotten for that? 50 grand, 100 grand?"
From Spielberg's office? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
Oh
yeah.
man, that is extraordinary. Oh my God.
Oh, man.
What an amazing thing, man. That is amazing. It's really incredible. Look, I mean, your career is so cool, and there's so many more things I want to talk about. I know but there's one thing that you mentioned before, because we have to wrap up shortly. But there's one thing that you mentioned, but as we were literally setting up the show today, like just having small talk, and you were like, you dropped some information about
Leah Thompson.
About Leah Thompson. And so I thought if you wouldn't mind chatting about that really would be awesome.
Well, the only thing I was going to say was that I always kind of felt during the 80s that Leah Thompson was kind of, for me, the girl that got away. I think I may even have told her this when I saw her. I saw her at a convention a couple of years ago in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And And I'm not if she hears this, I don't want her to really take it all that seriously. But at the time, I just thought that she was so beautiful and really talented and so sweet. She seemed very unaffected and not snobby or stuck up in any way. Totally. And it was weird how close I came to working with her so many times. I mean, I read and screen tested for Back to the Future. I read 5 or 6 times for Space Camp. I read 5 or 6 times for Some Kind of Wonderful and got right down to the wire for the part that Craig Sheffer did. And I always felt that she and I would have been just great together on screen. I just thought that we would have had really good chemistry. Yeah. And when I did finally meet her, she was exactly what I thought she was going to be. And I just kind of thought that she was always one of my, favorites, one of my ideal women from the 80s. And it was always frustrating to me that I came so close to working with her and meeting her and never actually did it. Oh, yep. Red Dawn was another one. Came close to Red Dawn too. So there were 4 or 5 movies where she would have been my girlfriend, and they just never happened.
has been one of those people like you, where having you on the show, and then you want to talk about. You want to talk about like the movies and the things that are, really geeky and really nerdy about why we love these films, why we love this time period, really. And it was the same kind of situation where she spent 20 minutes talking about Howard the Duck. And we were like, I've never heard someone talk about Howard the Duck with that much love and that much stuff. I mean, we learned in that interview that Robin Williams came to the set and offered to voice Howard the Duck.
Could have been the
Jay
Duck.
Leno offered to voice Howard the Duck and write jokes for it, and they just kept turning them down like left and right, which is amazing.
That was the fatal flaw. I mean, imagine Aladdin if it had just been done by a normal voiceover guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you have social media? Do you have a place that people can find you?
I do. I have. I really don't do Facebook that much, but I do Instagram a lot. So both my Instagram and Twitter handles are the same. And they're kind of quirky, but my initials are ZWG. My name is Zachary Wolf Galligan. I almost went by Zach Wolf instead of Zach Galligan. And
Zach
so
Wolf. That's a cool ass name.
I liked Zach Wolf because it was at the time it was Rob Lowe, Tom Cruise,
2 syllables.
Sean Penn.
Yep.
It was 2 syllables, bing bang. Zach Wolf, same thing.
You'd have played a lot of biker gang guys. Zach Wolf definitely runs with the Hells Angels or something.
So my handle is ZWGman, MAN. And so it's my initials and the word man. And I'm I'm verified on Twitter and Instagram, so it's very easy to locate.
Great. Well, look, for the future, Zach, if you would ever consider this, when we get back to the world where we're allowed to have guests live on stage, for whether for Comic-Con or for WonderCon or for anything, we would love to do something like this live and be able to open it up to questions, if from an audience and things like that. If you're ever down to do it, we would love to have you.
100%, not even a question.
Great. That'd be great, man. That'd be great. Mike Black, where can people find you?
At Mike Black Attack on all social media.
And you have plenty of Gremlins action figures.
Yes, I do.
From NECA, I believe.
You can see them
and
all.
I'll be getting a new one eventually.
You bet.
You can see them all on Mike Black's Instagram.
You bet.
Yep,
you bet. I believe Mike Black just recently purchased the brand new Snake Mountain.
I did.
It's a pretty big deal.
Very exciting.
It's very exciting.
Pictures.
How tall and how big?
Very. I don't know. It's like if you were laying down.
If I was laying down.
Yeah.
Enormous then.
If you were laying down and had like a vestibule
on top of me. All right. Matt Walker, where can people find you?
There are links to everything at funnymatt.com, or if you're upset by anything I said, please let me know at mattwalkersucks.com.
Matt Walker has also designed some terrific merchandise that you can pick up over at threadless.com. Oh, wait, no, is that the nighttime show.threadless.com, right?
Yes,
the
you can
nighttime
get our
show.threadless.com.
Our show merch there. We've got lots of good stuff. Art by Mario Delgado, who does our posters, and then also I
Well-
made a bunch of Star Trek related things.
Absolutely. We didn't even get to talk about the Star Trek connection here with Zach, who did show up in a Star Trek episode, I believe Voyager.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
See, so we may need to get him one of these shirts.
I didn't even get to bring Star. I didn't.
I know.
Well, you know.
Well, I brought it up
Next
for
time.
you.
Yes.
You can always get me at Stephen Glickman, Stephen Glickman on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and all the other places there are. Zach Galligan, you son of a bitch, you're the fucking coolest. Thank you so much for doing this, man.
It's absolutely been my pleasure, and happy to come on anytime you guys want.
You bet.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Zach.
buddy. Talk real soon.
Bye.